at the end of the line, the grievance officer could use some ground, some guidance on the penalty. I think that we could live with it, but I think it needs to be clear. I think there has to be some place where that is written, because 5 years from now, we might not be here, this group might not be here, that it's doing this, and there has to be some way to look back on it to say, this was what our intent was. When we passed this law, this was what our intent was. It can't be a black and white issue. It has to be somebody there that can make an informed decision.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you. I think you're referencing the discretion of the hearing officer, and I think that especially on the initial violation, I think that we've tried to build that in, because I think the real core piece that everyone's trying to get to is the education of everyone, particularly the staff person that violates the policy. So that you obviously want to get your staff folks educated so they don't make the mistake again, because that's in everyone's interest. So I think that we've gotten to that point. Yes, the fines are high down the line after multiple violations, but I think the discretion with respect to the hearing officer is something that I understand County Council and you and others that advocate from your position as retailers have tried to make that point, and that's been built into the ordinance. So hopefully the goal, especially with the first offense, is education.
Yeah, and if you've worked in retail at all, you know that education process is not black and white, and it doesn't happen to every. I mean, it just doesn't work. I had a young salesman just yesterday sell tobacco to somebody that looked like they were. I felt that they were of age after they walked out the door. But he asked are you old enough to buy this tobacco? And this person's got a signed affidavit in my store. They've been trained, and they continue to make these mistakes. And I don't want to have to stay up at night worrying about this. Because of everything I can do. When it comes down to it, I can only do so much, and then it relies on my my people that are representing me. And if they make mistakes, there has to be some way at the end of the line to somebody to hear that information and make a decision based on the whole picture.
Thank you, Supervisor Delbert.
A question for legal staff. Mr. Gravier's concern about the ability of the hearing officer in terms of the fines is not explicitly spelled out in here. In your drafting of this, is there any reason to believe that it's not the discretion of the hearing officer to adjust or make a determination on the fines as opposed by the agency?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We did draft into the ordinance the fact that the hearing officer has to write a decision, and that implicitly was for the purpose of having the hearing officer come to a decision that was supported. So the hearing officer, by virtue, I think, of the requirement of having to support whatever decision he comes to, has to exercise discretion. It's implied by requiring him to write a decision. He or she will have to exercise his discretion and explain it. You have another thought?
Yeah, and if I might add, there is a provision in there to allow for settlement discussions, and I think that's where the discretion comes in and the leeway comes in. But I want to make very clear that while we appreciate the input of the retailers, this ordinance was under review long before they entered the picture. And I just want to, we had concerns, our office had concerns over the hearing process at least 2 years ago. And we've been working very hard with HHSA to get those issues and concerns resolved. I do value the input by the retailers, but this ordinance change and amendment is not being driven by the retailers. I just want to make that very clear.
Counsel, could you point me to the right language in here that on the settlement discussion?
6-20090B.
Am I done?
I didn't have any
We all
questions for Mr. Graveris.
Am I done? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero.
Thank you.
That's on page 6, is
Okay.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Supervisor. Next speaker is Karen Wandry, please.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Karen Wandry. I'm Executive Director of the Mendocino County Youth Project. I want to say that overall I support the changes that have been suggested here, but I do have two concerns. The first concern that I have also pertains to the fines. It's perhaps a somewhat different concern than the last speaker. And I believe that the fines for a large retailer such as Safeway or Long's or a big corporate company like that, I think the fines really are not really that substantial for them. And so that's my concern, is that I think for small businesses, it's like the fines don't seem related to the volume of the business. And so it just seems to me that if you're at Safeway, you have to pay, for your third violation, $3,000 to $5,000 or